Order, please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to welcome everyone this evening. We're in smaller quarters because both auditoriums are being used by students tonight. I want to remind you, if you want to address the board tonight, to please sign the speaker registration form. And we'll start by approving our agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda as presented?
None for me, Randy.
Okay, we have a motion to approve, please.
Yes, Mr. President, I'd like to make the motion that we approve the agenda as printed.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you very much. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes, and we'll move forward with our agenda as presented. And our first report tonight is the superintendent's report. Mark?
Thank you. We have several items to present to you today. First are the bond project update and the bond budget update. Johnny Edwards is here to, our assistant superintendent for operations, is here to do that for you. Johnny?
Thank you, Superintendent Belang, President Van Antwerp, members of the board, members of the community. Tonight I would like to provide the board with a bond update. At Central Middle School, our final tab, which is testing, adjusting, and balancing, that was completed last week. The commissioning is still in progress, and we should be completed with the commissioning by next school board meeting, if all goes well. Also at Central Middle School, we are exploring the possibility of adding additional sound panels in the art classroom and in the science labs. We found that the quantity of sound panels at Central Middle School is slightly less than the quantity that was installed at North Middle School. So we're exploring the possibility of adding additional sound panels. Also related to bond projects, our construction of the softball dugouts at Central Athletic Event Facility is still on the expected timeline to be completed by the end of November. They are currently backfilling the foundation. The slabs will be poured shortly thereafter. Moving over to the 2021 elementary bond, the committee reviewed the architectural and engineering services RFPs. Since our last meeting, our plan is to bring an architectural firm recommendation to the board at the next school board meeting. In terms of the construction manager, the RFP will be issued November 2nd, and the proposals will be due November 17th. And I'll combine the budget area with my presentation. The highlighted items listed 1 through 6 and item 12, those are the items of the project that we are currently pursuing or in progress. It is our hope to bring a school bus recommendation to the board within the next couple of meetings. We are looking at adding 4 school buses from our unallocated contingency. When you look at the budget, we have approximately $1.9 million for unallocated contingency, and I'm happy to report to the board tonight that based off of our work at the Portage Northern Natatorium, that there is approximate savings of $709,755 that was budgeted for the project that will not be necessary. So that would bring our unallocated contingency to approximately $2.6 million. The next 4 items are items that have already been approved by the board. We're working with some technology items, the dugouts, as I've mentioned already, sound equipment and video equipment for our auditoriums. Once those projects are completed, we believe that our budget will be approximately $1.9 million. And then you can add in the anticipated interest for that fund that would bring us to an approximate $4.3 million for our unallocated contingency. So that concludes my presentation for bond updates and the budget. I'll be happy to answer any questions from the board tonight.
Well, that was all good news, sir.
It was all good news, absolutely, absolutely. We're really appreciative of all the work of our contractors, particularly around the natatorium project, to come in on time and under budget.
Is the interest income as restricted as the principal as far as what we can do with that?
Yes, we have to follow the same rules
For the interest, okay.
For
so-
interest as well.
Okay, I didn't
So-
know if that had to be, obviously, the bond proceeds are very strict what we can do with it, but the interest falls under those guidelines also.
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely. Any other questions from the board? All right. Thank you, that concludes my presentation tonight.
Thank you.
Thanks, Johnny. Our next report is our financial report, and Sammy Stevens, our business manager, is here to present that today as Paula is out of town. Sammy?
Good evening, Board of Education and Superintendent Beeling. Included in your board packet was the September financial report of revenue and expenditures through 9/30 of '21 compared to 9/30 of '20. The first page breaks out the revenues and expenditures by function code, and I'd like to touch on some of the key differences you'll see in that report. As you see, a lot of the revenues and expenditures have increased compared to last year, which is a good sign for the district. Please keep in mind that when looking at this, September is the month that we don't receive state aid, and we rely primarily on property tax collection and other miscellaneous revenues that we've received. You'll notice that local revenues are up. This is due to Curious Kids. Last year, they didn't start operations until September, and this year they've been running all summer. Athletic gate receipts are also contributing to that increase with local revenues. State revenues are up as well. This is primarily due to the ESSER supplemental payment that we've received and at-risk carryover from 6/30 of '21. You'll notice that the federal revenues are down, and that's primarily due to grants that we received last September due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And those two of those grants include the Child Care Relief Grant and the Coronavirus Relief Funds. Local payments from other districts are up, and that's due to the district receiving an enhancement millage revenue late from K-RESA. Under expenditures, a lot of the expenditures are up, and this is primarily, again, due to us leaving pandemic learning and go to a more normal learning experience. Basic programs are up. This is due to the Chromebook purchases out of the Coronavirus Relief Funds. There was also capital outlay included in the budget for 21-22, and that wasn't included in 2021. There's also new learning summer opportunities that are included in that which was done through the MDE and hasn't been previously done. Instructional costs are up as well. There was an increase in curriculum work for 21-22. Substitute teaching costs are up along with contracted staff costs. And again, like I mentioned, this is due to us no longer being in pandemic learning. Operations and maintenance costs are up as well. There was an increase in the GRBS costs compared to last year. This is due to additional locations being added to our contract, but Johnny is also working on that increase as GRBS is experiencing labor shortages. The school liaison officers are full-time this year compared to part-time last year. And then supplies for maintenance and operations are also up. The transportation costs are up. This is primarily due to us running buses 5 days a week instead of 4. So we're seeing an increase in gas, GPS, and repairs. Central services is up. This is due to the bond marketing, technology software licensing costs, as well as ESSER supplies that we've added to the budget this year that weren't in the budget for last year. Other support costs are also up, and this is due to athletic official costs being up as we enter this new norm after 18 months of sports during a pandemic. Child care services are up, and this is again due to Curious Kids running all summer long instead of starting up in September like last year. On page 2, you'll find expenditures split out by object code. Purchase services are up, and again, like I previously mentioned, this is due to substitute costs being up. Our district liability insurance with SetPsych also increased, and we're seeing an increase in conference fees and expenses as we're seeing a sense of normalcy in the return in regards to conferences. The supplies are up as well, and this is, again, as I had previously mentioned, due to the Chromebook purchases that we've made. And we're also seeing an increase in teaching supplies, custodial maintenance supplies, and in the testing and assessment areas. I think that covers most of the big gaps in the board report. A quick general update for you regarding the business office. We did have count day on October 6th, and we are starting to compile final numbers for SEPI, and those will be due mid-November. After count, we'll begin the amendment for the general fund. And then we also had a successful bond sale on October 13th, and you can find more details on that in the memo that Mark sent to you from Baker Tilly. I'd be happy to answer any more questions.
Sammy, I think you hit it out of the park.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Appreciate
much.
it.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Sammy. Just a couple of other, well, three other things I wanted to mention. Hopefully everyone now is aware that the CTE Center is more of a reality based on the announcement that there was a $100 million gift to build the center. It came to the K-RISA, so that is good news, along with the naming of the site, which will be adjacent to Wing Stadium along I-94. So highly visible area, centrally located in the county, easy access to all the schools. So it's what we had been hoping for all along. K-RISA is going through the design charrette process right now and pulling together where programs will be located, adjacencies, and beginning to do the, well, it's a schematic design right now before they get into design development. So good news on that front. Also, we continue to have challenges in having enough bus drivers. Today we were fortunate. We were able to get all of our runs done, but because of individual illnesses and such, we've already consolidated from last year 5 runs, consolidated or combined some runs. So we're still watching that. That's on a day-to-day basis. We may have to cancel runs here and there. And we will make those announcements as soon as we are aware of that, so parents can prepare for transporting students if they need to. Right now, we're okay, but oftentimes, and when I say okay, that means our drivers our maintenance staff and our office staff and transportation are being used to drive buses. So it's a one day or another, hard to tell what's going to happen. But we will try to spread that out so that one particular run isn't always affected. So our drivers know that they can drive several routes, and we may pull them off of their route just to distribute any inconveniences that might exist out there. And the last thing I wanted to mention is we did, as I indicated in one of the last monitoring reports, we're not doing the traditional employee engagement, parent and student satisfaction surveys this year. We are continuing with the pulse check surveys, and we just completed those and had a 1-week window at the first week of October where we surveyed students, parents, and employees, and those survey results have been broken down or being distributed out to the building level. And the buildings take a look at the results for their particular unit. And really the goal is to find out what parents, students, and staff say we're doing well and continue to do those things well. And then take a look at one of the lower areas that are identified and work to do something to improve that. In hopes that it'll change some of the results for next time and some of the services that we provide. We'll be doing a 90-day pulse check survey then in December to see, how we're progressing on that. So just at a very high level, on the student side, we had 3,600 students participate. They were asked 10 different questions, and the top areas, and there really weren't a surprise because it's some of the same results that we got last year. Our students are feeling safe, they're feeling connected with their friends, and that they have confidence that they'll be passing their class or their grade, depending on if it's elementary or secondary. So that continues to be good news. The concerns that they showed, or the areas that scored the lowest, were students not showing respect for one another. I think that's been very evident, at least from the conversations we've had at the building levels, where our students have forgotten how to behave around one another after being gone from school, and all this, I guess I shouldn't, it's not that simple. It's, a lot of the pressure they're under, the stress that they felt, it's coming back in with other students, and I think that's where that respect piece comes in. Parents, we had over 2,000 parents participate in the survey. Their top area, they were asked 8 questions, by the way. They have access to their child's teacher, which was the same as we heard last year. That was, we want to make sure that parents stayed connected with staff. Parents are confident in their ability to support their students in their learning, and that they have the resources they need to help their child be successful. So those were the top areas. An area of concern that surfaced was getting the kind of feedback that they need about their child's learning progress. And again, I don't think that's a surprise to us. And mind you, these differences from the highs to the lows are probably on a 5-point scale less than a half a point. So they're pretty tight, but it's areas that we have to start somewhere with where we improve. On the employee side, we had 413 staff members answer 10 questions. The top 3 on the staff side were, I know what's expected of me in my work, I would recommend PPS to other parents, and I feel a sense of belonging in my work environment. So again, that coming back into this environment has been very, very positive. Where the areas that could use some improvement, and this is again the same kind of thing that we've heard in previous time, is that I'm consulted in the decisions that affect my work. And again, that's a very, very difficult one in the decision-making process as to how we can involve everyone, especially on decisions that need to be made in a very short turnaround manner. So that's just some high-level results. Again, those district results and then the building level results, which probably vary by grade level and by building, are being shared, and they'll be developing action plans for improvement on that. So happy to answer any questions that come up out of any things I reported on. All right, that's all I have, Randy.
Thanks for sharing that, Mark. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move to our comments and communications section, and first is comments by citizens, and I'll ask our secretary, Dr. Celeste Shelton-Harris, to read our guidelines for public participation.
I'd be glad to.
Thank you.
Public comment on board meetings. The board welcomes community input at our public meetings. When addressing the board, please conform to these guidelines. Sign the speaker registration form at the beginning of the meeting. State your name and address. Limit your comments to 3 minutes. Provide a written copy of your comments and supporting documentation to the board secretary if available. Present your comments in a respectful and professional manner. Refrain from mentioning any student by name and contact the superintendent directly regarding personnel matters. Board of Education members are not obligated to respond to issues raised during public comment. Normally, such issues are referred to the superintendent for follow-up.
Thank you, Celeste. We have some students who wish to address the board tonight, and we're going to let them go ahead so they can go home and do their homework. And our first student tonight is Donnie. I'm sorry I can't pronounce the last name. Welcome.
Hello, my name is Daniel Harpenu. I'm a junior at Portage Central High School. I am speaking before you to stress the importance of more accurately and consistently incorporating African Americans, LGBTQ+, and other minority groups into our curriculum. Why do we only focus on history and literature told through the eyes of white men? Here, let me give you some examples. As I said, I am now a junior, and I have yet to read a book that was not by a white author. One book that was particularly difficult to read was Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck. This is a book that has countless examples of the N-word, only one female character who doesn't even get a name. She's referred to as Curly's wife. Why is it that we can read literature by a white author where this word is used, but read nothing that serves the perspective of a black person? To Kill a Mockingbird is read in 11th grade. Again, this is a white author using the N-word and giving their white perspectives of life in the South before the Civil Rights Movement. Where are the black voices on our history? It is important for people like me to know that they can be valued beyond sports and music, but as a smart, celebrated, and valued part of art, literature, science, and beyond. A possible solution to the lack of Black authors would be to incorporate books by Toni Morrison, James Baldwin, Maya Angelou, and Angela Davis. While I believe that I have made it clear that I would like to see myself in the history and literature that I am learning, it is also important for people to get different perspectives. My white classmates would benefit greatly from reading the literature that told the stories of minorities. My straight classmates would benefit from learning the voices of the LGBTQ+ community to not only see the struggle, but to the success of overcoming seemingly impossible obstacles. The LGBTQ+ community is still fighting for their rights and safety, and students should know that the LGBTQ+ issues extend beyond the AIDS epidemic. We should learn about the history of Stonewall, Harvey Milk, Matthew Shepard. Diversity in voices is absolutely a necessity for students in Portage Public Schools. It is important for us to grow, learn, and become better people. We must challenge ourselves in a way we've never been challenged before. There is power in knowledge, and I want to be in a school that values who I am and where I come from. That means celebrating people who look like me. Why wait for the change when you have the opportunity to be the change? Thank you for listening to me. Now please do something to make me feel like a valued part of this school district. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Grace.
My name is Grace, and I am a student of Portage Central High School, and today I feel that it's important to speak in this meeting. I came here today because students like me need more representation in school. As a freshman in Portage Central High School, I don't notice much representation for people of color, women, and queer folks in the school curriculum. In my experience, I've never heard about queer folks in school at all. Not in Portage Central Elementary, CMS, or CHS. There needs to be more representation for queer folks. As a student that identifies as queer, I don't feel seen in my school, and I know I'm not alone. I want to feel and be seen in school. I'm not being represented in my school. I don't feel seen. So far in my history class, students don't learn about people of color unless the focus is on enslavement in this country or the lack of voting rights for people of color. There needs to be more representation for people of color. If students don't learn about people of color, we won't have equal representation and we won't feel seen. When I learn about women in history class, I typically learn about one woman or 0 women per module or chapter, unless the focus is on voting rights for women. There needs to be more representation for women. I also identify as a woman, and again, I don't feel seen in my school. I don't see much inclusion in Portage Central High School, and I want to have that changed. To conclude, there needs to be more representation for people of color, women, and queer folks in the school curriculum. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Lily, please.
Hello, my name is Lily Davis, and I'm a senior here at Portage Central High School. I'm a part of my school's Jedi Club, which stands for Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. Over the summer, I participated in a seminar run by the University of Michigan called the Summer Youth Dialogues. It taught me how to create community projects in order to have social reform, which is why I'm here. Last January, we sent a letter demanding social changes in our school district. 312 people signed it, including 271 students, 30 teachers, and 10 staff members at Central and Middle High School, along with Northern Middle and High School. This was all done during the virtual school year. Although we sent it in January, we didn't receive a response until May. My understanding of this being that there was a response written, but there was no idea where or who to send it to. We share a parking lot with the administrative building. I can see the building out of the windows of my classes. We are an established club with student and teacher support, yet it wasn't known where to send the letter to. You are missing out on an amazing opportunity to better represent the students of color in our district because of this passive attitude. You say that you're doing something, however, we hear and see nothing. If you think you're doing something, none of it is getting back to the students. If it had, we wouldn't be here. That is unacceptable. In our letter, before our calls for change, we praise the effort put into hiring a DEI, or Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Coordinator. Before the end of the last school year, though, they had to move away. That is no one's fault. Where fault does come into play is the fact that the rehiring process just started within the past 2 weeks. Going 5 months without a DEI coordinator is detrimental to students, especially my peers of color. There are daily racist incidents and microaggressions at my school, and one public incident so far this year in which a DEI coordinator would have been invaluable. These incidents aren't things people can just get over. They are not just words or actions with no meaning. They are damaging, causing more stress in an already stressful environment. What could have been a great moment of change for Portage Public Schools, especially Portage Central, ended up being another step backwards because of your lack of action. As a district and a community, we cannot afford to take any steps backwards in the fight for social justice. We are a community that strives to create a safe learning environment for all of our students. When we allow these biases and microaggressions to exist, we fail this goal. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Fiona. Welcome.
Hello, my name is Fiona Doyle, and I'm a senior at Portage Central High School. No otherwise qualified individual with a disability in the United States shall solely by reason of her or his disability, as defined in Section 706(8) of this title, be excluded from participation in, be denied benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. As many may see, this is a sample from the school's handbook. This is a section on discrimination, but these words mean nothing when they are not applied. As a disabled student of Portage Central High School, I face daily discrimination almost every day for the past 4 years. I have learned that the school system does not help students with disabilities, but rather hinders. In my case, I have sensory processing disorder, ADHD, primary and attentive, working memory disorder, and these set me back in life. I've been told several times that people with my type of disability do not normally receive accommodations, so trying this process may be worthless. I have been waiting 187 days for my 504 to be processed and implemented, a task that is legally required to take 30 days. I've had over 30 emails and 5 school meetings. Still, I am unable to access equitable education, and I'm not the only one that's had this problem. I've been told students in advanced classes do not need accommodations. They should drop down a level instead. Just because I have a cognitive disability does not mean that I am unable to comprehend complex subjects. I've been told people like you provide no use to society and will get nowhere in life. I reported this teacher in 2019 to the school and no action was taken. Are any of these sentences acceptable to say to someone, let alone a child? None of these teachers or staff received reprimanding for the words, reported or not. And I'm not the first person to struggle with this problem. 1/5 of Americans are disabled, meaning a serious percentage of children in your schools have to go through what I have. I've lived my whole life knowing that I will have to struggle to do simple tasks. Then why does this school work actively against its own students by fostering an ableist environment? We should all have equitable access to education. What has been said to me cannot be changed, but what could be said to someone else in the future could be prevented. That's why I call to action to educate the teachers and staff of Portage Central Schools on ableism and disability. This will also be helpful for other subjects, such as LGBTQ rights or in racism. Implicit bias training is a great way to do this. Many may not know that the phrases that they say may be hurtful. Many may not know that simple things such as putting on captions or not requiring eye contact in speeches may significantly help a student. But until we teach people, ableism will continue to be a problem in Portage. We should be fighting for our students, not against them. Thank you.
Thank you, Fiona. Our next student speaker is Elise.
Hello, board members. I would also like to mention I was a part of the U of M program as well as many other programs this summer working on this project.
There are student members of our community who face social injustice and adverse experiences in and out of school on a day-to-day basis, leaving chronic disparities on motivation, education, and success. Fear and shame circulate the community and will continue to circulate until change is made. The loud silence from the Portage Central School Board has encouraged me, as well as my fellow members of the Portage Central Jedi Group and our close allies, Portage Northern, U of M Youth Justice Fellows, and the Lewis Walker Institute, to create a space for local accountability. I am here hoping to generate interest in the necessity of implicit bias training for all district staff and faculty. Teachers need to be trained so they can effectively have tough conversations with their students and in their classrooms. This training should be open to interested students as well. Understanding your own bias is extremely crucial to the well-being of not only yourself, but also the people you come in contact with. So this not only goes for teachers, but all members of the Portage community, including superintendents of curriculum and instruction, principals, assistant principals, paraprofessionals, counselors, administration members, office staff members, guidance counselors, school social workers, academic and athletic directors, food service workers, assessment and curriculum programs coordinators, communication specialists, human resource assistants, and most importantly, students. All of these positions and roles need to understand the significance of their bias's impact in order to communicate with those around them. Recent research on K-12 education shows that interventions can fabricate instant reduction in implicit bias. We can integrate equity-related guidelines into our teacher evaluation instruments by developing an examination rubric that contains specific knowledge, attitudes, tactics, and behaviors teachers should exhibit after receiving equity training. Examples of areas in which we might evaluate teachers' equity practices include classroom relationships, instruction, office discipline referrals, and student achievement on assessments. In 2019, a study was done on the efficiency of 18 de-biasing interventions, found that the most effective strategies are those that expose those participating to examples on how to profile, understand how to act with intentionality, and conditioning on attitude formation. This is to say that educators intentionally seek to understand their students, something they are innately wired to do and be. We understand that education professionals have a desire to improve the lives of their students in any way they can. That said, without proper implicit bias training, staff and faculty lack strategies and an understanding on how to react in certain situations and prevent themselves from saying or doing things that are inadvertently hurtful to children they truly care about. The staff members have only the best intentions, and they work extremely hard in order to create a safe space for students. Humans who go into the field of education don't do it for the money or glamour. They do it because they want to make a difference in the lives of children. They're devoted to this. Students are owed unbiased teachers, and teachers are owed the opportunity to improve themselves. So please take the next step to improve the culture of PPS by providing this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies. Our next speaker is Ryan Freeland. Welcome.
Evening, Mr. President, Mr. Superintendent, members of the board. Thanks for allowing me the opportunity to speak at this meeting. My name is Dr. Ryan Freeland. I'm a physician and graduate of Portage Central in 1996. It's been a few years since I've been here. The halls look very different. In any case, I am a 16-year veteran of the United States Air Force, having served on 10 deployments and 5 of those combat deployments. Know that tonight I'm representing thousands of students, faculty, coaches, and community members who couldn't be here tonight, but my point of request and my point of encouragement is to consider under point 2, commemoration and naming of school facilities. As many of you know, a legend in our community has passed over the last weekend, Mr. Robert Knight. He was a football coach here for 41 years and teacher for 34. So in simple and in short, as we consider naming and renaming policy here at Portage Public Schools, I ask that you consider naming or renaming McCamley Field and or the athletic facilities at this school. Allow me to present my case. As I mentioned, my story is unique. Coach Knight's impact on me has not been. I speak for thousands of individuals who couldn't be here tonight, who could also highlight his life-altering impact on their lives. For those of you who don't know, again, Coach Knight began his work here at Portage Central 1971, retired in 2005, continued to coach on staff until 2017. Impacting not only football players, not only athletes, but non-athletes, people of all races, all genders, faculty, and he was the de facto leader of the faculty and coaching staff, in my opinion. So, allow me to set the details aside and allow me to read just a portion of the note that I fortuitously wrote to him this summer, just months before he succumbed to metastatic melanoma over this weekend. This letter is dated 24 June 2021. Coach Knight. My letter reads, knowing you and playing for you changed the course of my life. I'd like to tell you how. I'm 43 years old now, and it has been 25 years since I graduated from Portage Central High School, but the lessons I learned from quarterbacking your teams are timeless, innumerable, and compelling to me even to this day. With deep gratitude and tremendous respect for you, Coach, please allow me to detail the most impactful lessons I learned from you. Number one, you connected hard work with success in the minds and lives of your players. Weightlifting, summer camp, two-a-day practices, Sunday night films, and so on were just a small representation of the work you had for us to compete and play for you on a weekly basis. Number two, you connected teamwork with success. And I have forever been changed by my life experiences and the teammates I played with in college, in the Air Force service of our country, and now the teammates I call teammates at my private practice. In the interest of time, I'll fast forward right to the end, but essentially he molded us, players, non-players, athletes, non-athletes, and in my final paragraph I said, Coach Knight, please know that I'm eternally grateful for you and the ways you have poured over all of your Mustangs with your, quote, great expectations, which was his annual speech to us. Your enthusiasm for teamwork, your extraordinary giftedness, your leadership, and your own brand of life-impacting coaching was as intense as it was molding and as personally challenging as it was team building, with highest respect and lifelong gratitude. Thank you, Coach Knight, for the opportunity to play for you, Dr. Ryan Freeman. So thank you for your consideration on this issue later tonight.
Thank you for your perspective. Thank you. Our next speaker is Kimberly Larson, please.
Hello. Apparently I am one of your favorite domestic terrorists. I say one of, not the only. And students here, I so appreciate your speaking up, especially about the ADHD. My daughter went through similar. It took a lot of courage for you to speak up. Thank you. The domestic terrorist comment is because I remember at a recent board meeting that some of you were attending, I think it was the National Association of School Boards.
No.
No? Thank you so much for telling me that. I appreciate that correction. Thank you. In which case, much better. So my next question comes up because I was, I'm kind of a geek. I've admitted it. I was looking up numbers and comparing them to Pawpaw, and I don't know how we fully compare. But between Pawpaw, Mattawan, those, I was looking at them, and I need to kind of know how many students are in our district, how many students have been quarantined, and how does that compare to other districts in order to really answer these geeky questions that I have. But I noticed that we have, in Portage, it looks like 134 students that have tested with positive for COVID, but even including up until before this Friday, there were only 6 students that actually got that in school, and that was for our entire district. That's like massive. And then I'd like to know how many were quarantined because of those 134. You see, my son was kept home, and he was a lucky one. He was fortunate. He was only kept home for 5 days of school because of the weekends on the ends, whereas most students could miss 7 or, depending on things, maybe more. And I'm also fortunate my son learns well at home. Many students don't. That's a privilege. And yet so I think of students who have IEPs, who have learning difficulties, who struggle with that at-home environment and are being kept home, and I'm wondering, is it worth it? And the reason I brought up Pawpaw is that they had 36 cases. I mean, they're a smaller district, so, that kind of makes sense. But I'd like to know how they compare, because they don't wear masks. And they quarantined 155 students, but only one of those 155 students ended up positive. So my question is, a teacher, is that worth it? Or is it better to have them at school? And I look at you, Randy, and I look at you, Miss Navaria, and my understanding is that COVID is a little more dangerous for someone who's older than high school, and you guys are a wee bit older than high school students. How much? That's up to you. I don't know. And so I'm wondering, why are we masking them? Why are we masking students for whom it isn't dangerous? I mean, they're going to get it, but it's not dangerous when we aren't masking ourselves. And that doesn't make sense, especially when you compare the privilege of being able to be at school and the students who are being affected detrimentally by not being able to be here for that. And that really bothers me.
Thank you, Kimberly.
Thank you for your correction also, Mr. Van Antwerp. I appreciate the clarification.
You're welcome. Thank you for speaking. Our next speaker is Karen Smoots, please. Thank you.
My timer start. Good evening. My name is Karen Smoots. I've been here obviously before. You all have seen me. I don't even think it's worth showing any more statistics and what parents have presented because clearly I feel like it's going in one ear and out the other. Emailing board members, emailing the superintendent. I listened to Ms. Harris say, if you have any other questions, please email the superintendent and they'll get back with you. They don't get back to any of us parents. We've had no feedback. My husband actually said, why don't you go in and play the Michael Jackson song that goes, they don't really care about us. And I feel like that's the parents that are asking for a choice. I look at that sign and it says, please practice social distancing and maintain a 6 foot from others. I wish I had a tape measure in my purse that I usually carry because not one of you in here are maintaining 6 feet of social distance. I watched Mr. Beeling take his mask on and off. I don't understand that. Like if you're worried about spreading, then why would you take your mask off and talk when particulates can come out and then you put it back on and your hands touch it? And that's what we're doing all day. I'm simply asking, I have a degree in business, I run 3 different companies, I'm accountable to people, and I have yet to see any common sense of what is going on. We don't wear masks in the hall, we don't wear masks at a volleyball game. I sat in the gymnasium on Wednesday night for freshman JV and varsity volleyball. Not one person had a mask on. But in a classroom for 45 minutes, they have to wear a mask. I get a text from my son last week, or 2 weeks ago. He's got his sniffles, right? He's got a cold. Not COVID, not influenza. He's got a cold. Couldn't come to school because he couldn't breathe through his nose, right? So he's stuffed up. So he has to breathe through his mouth. But he got yelled at by teachers telling him to put his mask over his mouth. So I get a text from him at 9:49 a.m. saying, I'm dizzy, Mom, I'm hot, I don't feel good. So we brought him home. Missed 3 days of school. He's a straight A student. He's never been in trouble. And he failed a test because he missed the notes and he missed the in-person. What are we doing here? None of these things make any sense. Like, I am literally a common sense gal. I have to deal with common sense business people every single day of my life. For the last 20 years that I've ran a business successfully, none of this is making sense. Half of you didn't have a mask on the last time, now we do. And we take it off to talk. And then we take it off and we talk into this, and maybe this microphone has, it's not going away. It's going to be here. Give these kids a choice. If you got vaccinated, that's your prerogative, and you made that choice, but you can't mask every child. Just like these children who spoke, they have a disability, and I appreciate that. I have a disability. You don't know what it is because it's hidden. All we're asking for is a choice. If these children want to wear a mask and the parents want them to, I 100,000,000% respect that. But on the same token, we've been asking you since school started to please give those other children a choice. My child should not have to miss school because his nose is stuffy and he cannot breathe through his nose, so he has to breathe through his mouth. I have an O2 sensor. It was 81. That was his oxygen level with the mask on.
Thank you, Kelly. Appreciate your
Karen.
comments. I'm sorry. Kelly's our next speaker. Kelly Sackett, please.
Hi, my name is Kelly Sackett, and I'm from Texas Township. I have 2 children who attend Portage Central Schools. I would like to address the letter that the National School Board Association sent to the Biden administration on September 29th, 2021. The letter states, America's public schools and its education leaders are under immediate attack. The NSBA respectfully asks for federal law enforcement and other assistance to deal with the growing number of threats of violence and acts of intimidation occurring across the nation. They then asked for expedited review by the Justice Department, the Homeland Security, the FBI, and enforcement of the Patriot Act. On October 4th, AG Garland issued a memorandum citing the Justice Department will launch a task force consisting of criminal, national security, civil rights division, and the FBI. The FBI launched the National Threat Operations Center and a tip line for anyone to turn in disobedient parents. No one advocates for threats to be made of any type. However, calling concerned parents domestic terrorists is beyond the pale. Do you know when I became a concerned parent? When you put a mask on my child. I will fight and continue to fight until the masks are gone, and then I will move on to CRT, or as diversity, equity, and inclusion, as you would like to call it. Many of us trusted you to do the right thing for our children and our community, and you let us down. We will continue to show up every month and have our voices heard. We are done being quiet, and we go by the names of mom and dad and not domestic terrorist. Let's go, Brandon.
Our next speaker is Rob Walk, please.
My name is Rob Walk. I would like to thank you guys again for the service that you provide as public servants. We appreciate what you do in trying to provide education for our children. One of the things we teach in our family is to be the example of what you'd like to see in the world. When I show up here and speak, and I think this is the 4th time now, I try to be an example for my family and the community to stand up for what you believe in. I've done so with respect and conviction, and my expectation that the elected officials and all of you would also be the example and stand up for your beliefs. And it should be done with conviction and respect. To be perfectly honest, I've not seen that conviction and respect from the board or the superintendent during the board meetings. While you certainly feel free to disagree with the things that we say, it's our right to stand up. It would be nice to see some respect while we're giving those comments. In the past, people have been on their iPads, on their phones, and there hasn't been a lot of attention to our comments. I understand that they've been long and there's been a lot of people, but these things are important to us. So instead, at the end, it's been acted as if not one person showed up for public comment, and there's been no recognition that we've even been here at the end in your comments. I've been to other school board meetings because this is important to us as parents to support other parents. And at those meetings, Climax Scott, they actually say thank you for coming. We appreciate your comments. We haven't received that here. All we're asking for is the same respect. We're engaged parents. We want to be engaged. We vote for you. If you don't want to come back next time because it's getting hot and we're terrorists, then don't. But in the meantime, we do vote. And we will be voting next time. And all we're asking for is to be engaged, to respond to people when they email, whether it's the children or whether it's parents. We all want the same thing. I applaud the kids for coming up and being engaged in the process. That's what this is about. It's about being engaged. And when we're engaged, we're asking you to be engaged with us. Now, I have 49 seconds left. I don't want masks on my kids anymore. Some of you have choice here today. I understand that you probably don't all agree with the mask mandates. I'm assuming so. I've heard that. And I've also heard that you vote as one. My understanding is if you have a collection of, if you guys meet together, it needs to be open. I haven't seen that open meeting where you guys say whether or not you meet together, or even if it's emails. So I'm concerned that clearly all of you probably have choice. Some of you have choice on whether to show up today with a mask. If you really believe that our kids should be in a mask, if all of you believe that, then you would be wearing one today too. If you believe that the virus is so deadly to our kids and so impactful, you'd have one on too. Because the numbers show that for adults, it's way more deadly, way more contagious than for kids. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob. Our next speaker is Josh Cunningham, please.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen of the board, Superintendent Beelang, Mrs. Atkinson. I sure wish I could speak as eloquently as Dr. Freeland. I can't, so I won't try. But I just want you to know that there's a fair amount of support for change in the district. There's been a lot of talk here tonight about change and different things for students and different things for teachers and all of that. Our community is also an area that I think that we can certainly be connected to our high school here, and in specific the field out there, the football field. Coach Bob Knight, his scope of influence, that's something that Dr. Freeland talked about, carries generations, both as a teacher and as a coach. And bottom line, there are some things in this world that don't make a whole lot of sense. This is one that does. McCamley, from what I understand, was a local politician that may have played a role in the land being donated for the very, very cheap price of a buck, so that we could build our athletic facilities out here. And I certainly wouldn't say that needs to be dismissed in any way, shape, or form, but there's just some things that make sense. And renaming that field in honor of Coach Knight is one that does. So please give it some consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. Our next speaker is Mary Beth Henry, please.
Last December, there was a huge emphasis on our first ever coordinator of diversity, equity, and inclusion. It was also glorified in collaboration with the Great Lakes Equity Center. It most certainly gave the perception that Portage Public Schools were starting to take steps towards addressing not only current issues in the district, but also ongoing issues. Unfortunately, we would not be here if this were the case. I would like to reference a letter us parents, residents, and alumni received from the superintendent last April. The reassurance we were given was that the DEI coordinator would be familiarizing themselves with DEI efforts and initiatives already existing in the district, meeting with students, staff, and parents to learn about what is happening and gaining an understanding of the issues facing our community. Those findings would have then been presented to the executive leadership team to help draft a comprehensive equity plan. And I quote, "It is critical that our efforts to create a more diverse, equitable, and inclusive school culture contributes to and is embedded in our three strategic priorities: student success, people and culture, and service excellence." These issues were later addressed in meetings with the DEI coordinator between April through June, then board meetings in July and August, as well as in personal communications with Ann Gordon and Janine Matson-Gerhardt. Here we are nearing the end of October, and the same questions are arising. When will our DEI coordinator be replaced, which was once estimated to be hired by the end of last school year? Are there continued initiatives taking place with Great Lakes Equity Center or the local efforts that were referenced in April? Has the executive leadership team started to draft a comprehensive equity plan? Are we providing education on implicit bias? Are we looking at our own disciplinary data and its inequities? Are there cultural competencies, equity education, or coaching provided to our educators? We are not asking these questions to just be appeased by a formal letter. We are asking these questions in order to create momentum and initiate action towards goals, strategies, and a better future for our children. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jessica Van Dyke, please.
Good evening. Thank you for having me here today. As I said, my name is Jessica Van Dyke. I'm the parent of 4 kids who are enrolled part-time in Portage. So I was pleased over the summer to see the parental choice messaging from Superintendent Beeling and Portage Public Schools regarding the fall COVID protocols. I do believe it's very important for parents to be able to make medical decisions for their children to the greatest extent possible. So this messaging was very encouraging, especially when there were all those Channel 3 interviews and over Superintendent Beeling was emphasizing our parents want parental choice, and so that's what they're going to get. Now, obviously, the Kalamazoo County mandate threw a bit of a wrench in those plans. I was not particularly thrilled to see Portage choose to extend that all the way to 12th grade. But I did at least appreciate that the communications during the summer were indicating it was just for instructional time, as is required by the mandate. And I felt fairly confident at that time that we would, as soon as the vaccine for ages 5 to 11 is approved, that we would see the end of mandatory masks and other restrictions. And it appeared that in the meantime, fine arts, athletics, clubs, and so on would be able to operate normally with no mandatory restrictions, which again tracked with Superintendent Beeling's emphasis on parental choice. But the reality is that it has not turned out this way. In practice, middle school and high school students, almost all of whom have the option of being fully vaccinated if they choose, are still being required to wear masks, in some cases do daily antigen testing for extracurricular activities. And this is not required by any health department or governing body. And so this has me becoming very concerned that Portage Public Schools as a district does not have an off-ramp for these requirements that are invasive, very limiting to our students, and are also inconsistent across departments. I'm concerned as well that the parental choice that Superintendent Beeling spent so much time emphasizing is not going to be restored, even with the vaccination availability that most likely will be here within the next few months, with hopeful approval in the next few weeks. We were told, and we're continuing to be told by our public health officials, that our vaccines are how we return to normal. They are freely available to all high school students and almost all middle school students, and yet we are still imposing these interventions that are not normal, and we're not required to impose them. We're choosing to do that. And so I want to know, how long are we going to continue doing this? What are the circumstances that are considered good enough that we're not going to require it anymore? Right now, there's no expiration in these requirements for the 7th through 12th graders, and that's really very unfair to these students who are expected to mask and test far beyond what most adults are required to do. The majority of districts in Kalamazoo County are currently running near normal educational programming, minus the K-6 masks during instructional time, while Portage is continuing to deny us the parental choice at all grade levels, both during and after the school day, and there's no particular difference in COVID outcomes between different districts. I feel that it's very necessary that Superintendent Beeling and Portage Public Schools set a hard date now that parental choice is fully restored, and it needs to be concurrent with the Kalamazoo County mandate being rescinded, if not sooner. It'll be far too easy for us to sleepwalk into continuing this for the whole rest of the school year without a hard deadline. We need to accept whatever risks are present, as many of you currently are, and restore our full educational experience in Portage. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Abigail Van Dyke.
Hello, my name is Abigail Van Dyke, and I am a part-time student at Portage North Middle School. I've been going to Portage North Middle School since I was in kindergarten. I'm very glad that this year we got 5 full days face-to-face school. I love going to band in Spanish all 5 days. But I'm very frustrated that we still have to wear masks, even for kids who are able to get vaccinated. When it came to learning Spanish, it was hard because of the masks. It was hard to understand the teacher and what she was saying in Spanish because I couldn't see her face. For band, we had to wear a 2-layer mask, fitted so that we could put our instrument in to be able to play. And they were very annoying. I was not enjoying wearing these masks, and I know my friends and family don't like them either. So I'm wondering, when is this going to be done? And I don't want to wear these masks anymore. Thanks.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ali Lapari. Welcome.
Hello. I'll be very brief. My name's Allie. I've been a Portage Public Schools parent for about 15 years now. I just wanted to voice my support for the Jedi Club and diversity, equity, inclusion principles. Here at Portage, I wanted to implore Dr. Beeling, Mr. Albertus, Mrs. Jensenius, all of the administration and the Board of Education to report back to the Jedi Club periodically, hopefully, once a quarter, about the progress that's been made. I thought they had some really great suggestions and things that Portage Public Schools could do. Right now, what I have been told by many is that Black and brown children do not feel safe and supported at Portage at times. So if we can do anything as parents, as board members, as administration, and as teachers to help these young people feel supported, then I just wanted to voice my support as a parent for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is, I'm gonna get this wrong, I think it's Reverend, is it McCartney? Is that correct? Okay, our last speaker then is Emily Crawford, please.
I'm going to speak from here because I'm loud. I just wanted to join in and reiterate again, I would like, as a parent of 5 kids in the school district, I would like my kids to have the choice, for me to have the choice about what's going on with my kids' medical decisions. Not only when it comes to masks, which let me just tell you, it's fun with my kids. They're gross. But I want to reiterate this, is that I've had the kids come home and tell me their teacher has told them they can't take their mask off until they get vaccinated in this school district. That there is a plan for all the kids to be required to be vaccinated. Teachers have said this to our kids in elementary school. Okay, if there is any variety of plan, if there's anything involving vaccinations, you need to do a better job communicating that to the parents, to the community. As according to what we're reading right now, they're hoping that's going to be eligible for the kids from 5 to 11, starting the first to second week of November. And if you need to make communications before that happens. Because as we've seen other school districts, actually they've had their kids sign off on things and had their kids get vaccinated without their parents' consent. That's happened in this country, and I don't want that happening to my children. So I want to make sure what y'all are going to do about vaccinations when it comes to that age group. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Now we'll go to comments by board trustees, please.
I want to make a comment about our football coach, Kurt Twitchell at Portage Northern. I have not met Coach Twitchell, but there was an article in the October 19th issue of the MHSAA second half that some of us may have seen online that talked a little bit about Coach Twitchell and had some good things to say. The thing I want to recognize that he did that I think was pretty commendable, on the 16th of October, Portage Northern hosted a band invitational. And Coach Twitchell asked that all his football players attend that band invitational and watch Portage Northern's band in the competition. That is something that I have never heard of in all the years that I've been in Portage. There are sports that are highly visible and they're supported by the community. There are lots of other activities, including some sports who very often don't have spectators except the students' parents. So I thought this was really an outstanding move on Coach Twitchell's part, that he would have his football players who are weekly supported by the marching band attend the marching band's competition. So thanks to the coach.
Thanks, Terry.
Randy, I'll go next. I'll start with the CTE. You know, what a great gift for this community. I mean, I'm in 100% support of CTE. I wasn't 100% support of the plan because we were talking about maybe a $20 million facility, maybe an $80 million facility, but there really wasn't a plan. But wow, it looks like we got $100 million, and I can't tell you how excited I am. I mean, this is great for the community. Thanks to the donor. This is fantastic. Our community is so blessed with this or these anonymous donors that I just cannot comprehend it. There's no community as lucky as ours when it comes to what we have, and so great thing for our community.
Well, go ahead.
Okay.
I was just going to say the same thing on behalf of CTE, and congratulations and credit for K-RESA Superintendent Dave Campbell, who we heard from, I believe, the last meeting. And certainly to the donors, but also to the parents in this room and in the community that have pushed for this and supported this. It's a wonderful thing.
Once again, Mark, I do this every meeting, thanks to you and your staff. Still have lots of struggles, you know, finding people, hiring people. We're talking about buying 4 more buses, and there's enough work just trying to find bus drivers. And I mean, everybody's pitching in. Teachers are doing more. We're trying to do more with less, just because you just can't find people. I know everybody's working hard and getting creative, as we talked about earlier. You know, bus routes and everything. Getting creative with that. A lot of creativity going on, and I just appreciate everybody's hard work. But lastly, I just want to talk about Coach Knight. I have a unique perspective because I played at Portage Northern and I played against Coach Knight, and I was 1-1. So strangely enough, you know, I was a Northern player. I graduated in '83. I developed a close friendship with Coach Knight. Somehow he respected me enough. He was the first person to ever ask me to come on school board. About 25 years ago, Coach Knight showed up in my office at work, said, "I want you to go on school board." I said, "Gosh, Coach Knight, I'm so honored. Got a little problem. I live in Kalamazoo." I said, "I will fix that, and then I will run for school board." But, I mean, I really truly was, because Bob Knight was just such a leader, such a mentor. You know, I don't know what God's plan is. Sometimes God takes the best from us early. You know, that same thing happened in my brother's case, and I just can't understand, but we just need to, you know, celebrate Coach Knight's life. He was just a wonderful person. I think some of the celebration of the life, you know, just think of all the wonderful people he helped. Eric, I think my favorite story was it Coach Knight that kicked you off the copy machine? Sure did. So, Ford doesn't know this story. I'm going to steal your thunder, Eric. But Eric was a young teacher, brand new teacher at Portage Northern. I mean, today he looks like he's 25, so he probably looked like he was 13. So Eric Albertus is at the copy machine as his fresh new teacher, and Bob Knight kicked him out of the copy room. He said, "Get out of here, you're not supposed to be in here." Eric got all his stuff together and had it all done out. So, just a great story. Yeah, this community lost a great man. It really did. Wonderful person, selfless person. It's just really sad. And I appreciate everybody's comments tonight, Coach Knight. That was really good.
I would like to just do a segue into that, because my first administrative position in Portage was at Portage Central High School, and I can't say enough what Coach Knight did for me personally. And as an assistant principal, you're dealing with discipline, and he just made my job easy when it came to football players. So I definitely believe that there should be some celebration. I'm just not sure how that looks, but I am indebted to his kindness to me and make me feel a part of Portage Central High School, especially as a first-time administrator.
Thanks, Celeste. Anyone else?
Randy, I would just say, you know, regarding Coach Knight and his family, condolences to the family. I never knew the man, but I knew his reputation. I grew up at Gull Lake and knew his reputation then. He was a giant. Not quite sure, you know, how to address the issue, but looking forward to beginning the discussion of that a little later.
Yeah, thanks, Bo. On behalf of anybody else? On behalf of the board, I'd just like to extend our condolences to Bob Knight's family. I only met Bob a few times. I went to Northern, but he was a great guy. I enjoyed my meetings with him. Just had a few meetings with him, but he was obviously a great guy. And my fondest memory of him was at the last night under the lights at McCamley Field, and Bob and his wife got to throw the switch, and I mean, what an honor. I mean, he was quite a guy and certainly deserved that opportunity to do that at McCamley Field. And with regard to our speakers tonight, we always welcome public comment. We appreciate the respectful way the comments were delivered this evening. I know we don't agree on everything, and I just want to make it clear that we don't view parents as terrorists. We're not part of the National Association of School Boards, and we welcome public comment here. Just wanted to let you all know that. Thank you. We will move to the consent agenda. We have 3 items this evening. The first is approval of the October 11th, 2021 Committee of the Whole work session. Policy revisions that the Board of Education approved the proposed bylaw and policy updates as presented from Neola that Mark reviewed with us at our last meeting. And finally, that the Board of Education approved the proposed revisions to Policy 1.0 Global Ends as presented. And that has our new Ends Policy 1.3 on resilience in life, which is a reference to social emotional learning. Are there any exceptions to the consent agenda as presented? Hearing none, the consent agenda is approved. And we'll move to our discussion items. The first one is on page 19, and that's the MASB Delegate Assembly Handbook revisions. As you know, I'm going to be attending the Delegate Assembly on November 11th. Trustee Novaria, Vice President Novaria is my alternate, and I'm ready to vote, ready to do my job. Now, I don't know if any of you reviewed the material or have any questions about the material. Well, I just want to give you some high points of the things we'll be voting on.
Excellent.
And we're going to be voting on a lot of stuff. Anyway, we have some amended resolutions we're going to vote on. And a lot of them are just changes to the heading or the title of the resolutions. For instance, curricula and parental control. I'm going to cast a vote to make it curricula and parental involvement. Huh?
Oh, yeah.
Like that, yeah. And another one is reading skills. They're going to change that to literacy skills. Okay, and there's a new resolution for social and emotional learning supports that they're encouraging local districts to establish. And I just thought you'd be interested in the language they used, given we just worked on this policy. And it says, they say that students need to be able to regulate their emotions, collaborate with their peers, communicate their ideas, and appreciate the perspective of others. And I believe that's sort of what we meant in our resilience title for our policy. And really, everything else is just pretty simple. There's some deleted resolutions that they've decided are duplicates and others that are covered by state law. But anyway, I said I'd never go again because the last one was 4 hours, but this one's only supposed to be 2. So you can count on me. You can rest easy. I'm going to get this done, okay? All right. All right. Our next discussion item is commemoration and naming of school facilities. And this is on our agenda because of the communications we had last week from the community suggesting that the name of McCamley Field be changed. So to get that discussion started, we thought we would put that on the agenda for this evening. And I'm just going to review the policy real quick and sort of describe where we are now, and we need to have some discussion about where we go from here. The policy is very specific that the Board of Education has complete authority and responsibility for naming facilities and to change the existing names of facilities. And facilities includes athletic fields. Now, our customary practice here is to name a new school or facility after a street or a part of the city. And, you know, for instance, 12th Street Elementary or Portage Central High School. But we also have the option to use commemoration. And commemoration is the board may commemorate a facility by means of naming it after a person who has made exceptional contributions to the district or the community and meets the following criteria. Number one, contributions and good character of the person are well documented and acknowledged within the community, and that the person must be deceased or no longer employed or have any current formal association with the district. Agreement of the person or next of kin, if possible, must be obtained. The policy offers no guidance on who can make a suggestion to name a facility or change the name of a facility. So based on that, from the policy, we're assuming that anyone can. And right now, we have several suggestions regarding McCamley Field. One is to rename McCamley Field. Another one we received is to rename the football field after Coach Knight and leave the entire sports complex named McCamley. Another suggestion we received was to name the field McCamley Knight, similar to what they did in Rockford with a former school board member and their football coach. We've also had letters asking us to find another way to honor Coach Knight, and Portage Central has also been working on some plans to honor the coach. So those are the suggestions we've received. Now, we haven't named a facility after a coach or an individual for over 60 years. At least McCamley Field was named over 60 years ago. And I just want to point out who McCamley was. Stuart McCamley was elected township supervisor, Portage Township supervisor, beginning in 1936, and he served for 20 years until 1956 when he was 79 years old. He was elected and served as president of the Board of Education from 1945 to 1954, beginning when the 8 Portage schools were consolidated to form Portage Township Schools. During his tenure as president of the board, the first football team was fielded, land for the stadium was acquired, and Portage Township High School was built. McCamley Field opened in 1958, and we affirmed that back in just a couple of years ago when the new McCamley Field was opened. So I'm just reviewing the policy, telling you what it is, telling you where we're at, and I'm looking for some feedback on where you think we need to take this, and we need to take it ahead, but in a thoughtful way. So, open to comments.
Well, Randy, Coach Knight certainly meets, the commemoration aspect. We have a lot of great community people in this community, a lot of great coaches, but, Coach Knight, like, I wasn't even one of his players, but he was a mentor to me, and I was close with him. He wasn't just Celeste, he was a leader. He was so much more than just there for the football players. He does meet that commemoration. In my opinion, how he approached it, there's just too many avenues, especially for this board, because I think we're 100% Portage Northern board members up here. Not by plan, but it's just how it is. But it's a part of the community. I understand the central community, but I just think somehow there's a lot of suggestions out there. And I don't know if we have the collective knowledge to be able to really make that decision. We need to have some type of committee, in my opinion. What that looks like, I don't know. But, and I don't want to move fast. We want to move it fast, but we want to do what's right, and slow this thing down. Coach Knight just passed, and it'd be great to have some family input as well. They're a great family, and I just loved They don't want privacy, they want community, they want people to talk about them. I was with a friend this weekend whose husband passed away, and she just appreciated because we sat down after the Michigan game and talked about her deceased husband for hours, you know, and she said, this is so important because people just don't want to do that. And then I think it's wonderful that the Knight family says, hey, we don't want privacy, we want community, we want to talk about this. That's just a wonderful thing. And that's what Coach Knight wants. I'm talking about Coach Knight, but that's in my opinion. I think there's some type of committee, there's some type of recommendation, because we've had, obviously you've said we've had lots of recommendations. Coach Knight clearly exceeds the reasons for commemoration, in my opinion.
Thanks, Rusty.
I think there's some precedent on the way they did we did Husky Stadium, that they formed a committee and they came to the board. I mean, Tara and I sat on that committee and they came to the board how we got and, you know, got to Husky Stadium. And I think there should be a committee outside this committee to bring us a recommendation that's gone through administration and fits the criteria. And, you know, it doesn't have to start here, probably shouldn't start here. And so, you know, the way I have no problem doing it, except it shouldn't be us making it. It should be a group of people concerned and try to figure out what's best for this campus and figure out how to do it. And you know, come to us, and we're pretty reasonable people most of the time, and we'll consider it and we'll vote on it. So.
I would say this needs to be a very thoughtful process. You know, 2 years ago, the new stadium opened here, and at that time, there were discussions that went on about what do we want it to be called, and the decision was made to keep it as McCamley Field 2 years ago. So I guess my thought is bring it forward, change it now, cancel Curtis Stewart McCamley. 50 years down the road, is that going to happen again? And what are we setting ourselves up for with other facilities in the community, school buildings, athletic facilities, auditoriums, and so forth? So I'm not saying good or bad, I'm just saying there needs to be a really thoughtful discussion about what kind of a precedent this sets and how are we going to appropriately honor Coach Knight, but then how are we going to set ourselves up in the future when this comes up again?
And I, you know, I had said, you know, I fully support, and that, but as I mentioned, I'm not sure how that looks, and I agree. You know, you said 65 years ago. 65 years ago, it's not, this board won't be in existence, and so we don't, and we want something that's going to have some longevity, even if we don't know what that looks like now. I'm also, I don't know where we are as far as McCamley. I mean, are there some family members? Are there some, do we know anyone who is a part of that family? McCamley family, because I mean, I'm not sure how that someone would feel from the family if we're taking that name away. I mean, I don't know what it looks like. This is not an easy decision, but I do think it needs to be very thoughtful, and in addition to that, something that's going to have longevity. I mean, you know, even when we're no longer here as a board or as a whatever. So.
Well, and a pretty well-known precedence of that is John Wooden is certainly a familiar name to most people, and certainly somebody who I think the whole world would agree should be honored. And of course, he coached at Pauley Pavilion for UCLA, and they couldn't take away an established name, so they named the court. It's now Pauley Pavilion. It's the John Wooden basketball court at Pauley Pavilion. So I do see some parallels, but to take the name away of somebody who presumably is still in good standing, I think would be an unusual thing to do. But I like the committee idea outside of this group.
Just for some levity, I think the McCamley family had to be embarrassed for that football field for like 20 years. And now it's finally a great field.
No longer.
I mean, I'm serious. It was probably the worst football field in Southwest Michigan.
Yeah, it was pretty rough.
Pretty rough.
But it's something this community is very proud of, and, yeah.
Maybe they didn't mind it that way because he made a comment when he was running for township supervisor, because the issue was the roads and how bad Westnedge was. And apparently he said, well, why would we want to fix it? Just more people will come here. We don't want that. So,
Well, I don't like them then. I think we should spend more on that.
right, right.
Never enough barrels.
Randy, my gut is, I would like to see some thinking, and we probably have to help facilitate it, but bubble up from the Portage Central portion of the community. I would listen strongly to that. And I'd like them to be mindful of the policy. There is something about jettisoning the McCamley name. Just my gut is I would want to be very sensitive to that. But I think when you give it some time and have some dialogue, I'm just hopeful that there could be some clever way to figure this out, because I'm just trying to think of who would be more meritorious of something like this, and there's nobody else. So I really want to hear what the Portage Central community would think about this, and I just welcome that, a lot of dialogue and a lot of thinking, and I'm just hopeful that there's a good solution there.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say that everybody on the board believes it would be a good thing to honor Coach Knight in some way. Maybe it's the field, maybe it's something else, I don't know. It's kind of ironic that on the 100th anniversary of the district, where we're trying to celebrate and enhance our history, that we would be totally taking away a name that's been with us for over 60 years. So I agree the decision has to be thoughtful, and the work probably starts with the policy, because that's how we do our work, because we don't make ad hoc decisions that are arbitrary in one situation. We govern through our policies that set the standard for what happens down the way, no matter what individual might be involved. So we can say the community, we want to find a way to honor Coach Knight, and we're gonna take a look at our policy and see what we can do to put a group of people together to vet all these suggestions we've received, and we'll move on as fast as we can. We would like to honor him. He was a great man, no question.
Somebody move around. Yeah, thank you.
If I may, committee. I volunteer to lead the committee. If it be your pleasure, I'm happy to work with you guys. I will say very specifically, I know the family would shy away from this sort of activity, because I know in their humility, they don't want it to be a family project. So while we would love the Knight Family Incorporated, they don't necessarily want to lead this. And that's the exact reason we should honor Coach Knight, because that's the type of individual that he is. And we mean in no way any disrespect towards McCamley. We played on that field, we played under those lights, Northern and Central, both of these communities, both great histories there. So we mean no disrespect in any way, but we just want to honor Coach Knight. So we'll be in communication, thank you.
Thank you. Well, thanks for coming down here all the way from Grand Rapids tonight.
Just, one other thing with that Dr. Freeman brought up is, it is McCamley, and a lot of people have great memories about McCamley. So whatever we want to do, I think it's really important that we still have McCamley part of that situation, because I played on McCamley. You played on McCamley, and so I think still somehow we want to keep McCamley part. I'm just giving the committee direction. I also want to, Randy, because we guide by policy, but the committee structure I don't know if you can tweak it.
Yeah, I think we need to take a look at that.
We need to tweak that. The committee structure is just not really strong for this type of thing, so I would leave it up to you and Mark to consider a way to tweak that, because there's a lot.
Well, on the policy committee,
Yeah.
You can't do anything with the policy.
Don't throw this to policy committee, just change it.
Okay.
I would like you guys to consider wandering outside the specific structure of the committee as in this policy.
Yeah, I think we should. We probably need some advice from some people that are closer to the situation. Yep. Okay. Well, we're moving on to our last discussion item this evening, and that's the approval of the virtual program. And we have Mike and Kelly going to tell us all about it.
Hi, thank you, trustees. It's good to be before you this evening to kind of wrap up our agenda tonight. We are making a recommendation to explicitly include our virtual elementary program and select middle school virtual courses in our programs of study for both elementary and middle school respectively. Giving you a little background on how this came about. So Michigan has always had some virtual learning and distance learning elements in the way we were doing pupil accounting. And when the pandemic happened, those had to be rescinded to some level, and because we weren't meeting the expectations of in-person instruction during the pandemic. As we've moved out of that season, we still have schools that are utilizing some sort of virtual or distance learning. And I use those two terms specifically. So recently, this last summer, the Michigan legislature adopted some new language through their appropriations bill, as well as they adjusted what we call the Pupil Accounting Manual, or the PAM. And in there, it kind of set up new definitions for distance learning. Basically, distance learning used to be a situation where the teacher was far away and the students were in school in a particular lab, so we could utilize a teacher from another district and students here. But now that means students at home who are working possibly with a teacher somewhere else, but they're meeting on the same time schedule and through the same daily repetition that their in-person classmates are as well. And so that's what's designed as distance learning. So we're still using Google Meets, and that is really our high school and middle school virtual programs. They really are what the state refers to as distance learning, because they're still following the same schedule of the day, the class is the same length of time, and they're just using that interface of Google Meets to do the connection. Different than that, though, is what the state defines as virtual learning. And that's learning that has a modified schedule for the amount of time, and the work can be done asynchronously. So a teacher may issue some assignments, and they may not meet again or meet at a particular schedule that matches their in-person counterparts. We have a few classes at the middle level that are doing that. In order to get some of their electives in with our virtual program, we needed a fitness class, a French class, and then a handful of electives for students to kind of round out their schedule. And those are done using the virtual learning. But the rest of the high school and middle school virtual programs, as we call them, are really technically defined as distance learning. And so those don't require a change. The distance learning ones do not require a change to our program of studies, but the virtual ones do. And I'll let Kelly explain about our elementary virtual program.
Thanks, Mike. So the elementary program is utilizing the virtual learning module or program. And that's really because we are modifying the in-person requirements for the amount of time that kids are on that computer. We don't want kids on a computer straight all day long, kindergarten through 5th grade. So we're being more flexible with the amount of time so they're able to jump up, jump back in, do a small group, have a snack, do things that kids normally do at school, being able to have some breaks there with them, but on the computer at home. With that, we do have to have some expectations that go along with that in order to count it, to meet those state and federal guidelines. So one of those is we have to have a separate course syllabi for each of those programs, K through 5, and within that, they have to basically say, what are the kids learning, what's the name of the course program, what is the course description, and all of the standards that will be assessed. So Jessica Winstanley has been working diligently getting that all up and running and ready to go for us. So we have a course syllabi K5 for our students. The second part is that every student needs an EDP, or an educational development plan. So what that means, those are counted as part of their PPS membership, so student count. We hold record of those. So currently we have reached out to every parent in the virtual programming to say things like, tell us about what your student needs, what are some ways we can help support them, how do they learn best, and along those lines. So then what we do is we take those, the teachers have them on file, they're able to access and reference them and support kids. So those don't go anywhere but our own files, but if we were asked for them, we do have them for each and every one of our kids. The third and most important one is for our attendance, is that we track and record weekly two-way interactions for the duration of any virtual learning program. So we have to do that. That's probably the most tedious part of the virtual programming right now, is being able to not only do that part, which we all want to communicate, but really is to record it. And a two-way conversation or interaction is a conversation. So it can't just be, I sent out a blasted email to all my families and check I'm done. It is really around being able to say, I called this parent, we had a conversation about my child's learning. I can count that as a two-way interaction. As the kids are older, they are able to do that, the teacher and the student, but in elementary, because of their age, we really need to have that interaction between the parent and the teacher. So we do have that in place, and again, with the assistance of Jill Slott through the K-RESA pupil accounting, she really helped make sure we were hitting the right things on that accounting measure, and then Jessica Winstanley developed a whole system for us to keep track of that. So we feel like we have all the pieces in place that we need to make sure that we are doing this, doing what is right for this program. And then what we want to be able to do is have it explicitly, as Mike said at the beginning, in our program of study. So it is saying there that we do have that, and that's why we're recommending or submitting this recommendation today. So if there's any questions we can answer for you, we'd love to do that.
Well, thanks for letting us know what the PAM is. I didn't know
Yeah.
that. Thank
It's a
you.
good one.
Yeah.
So easy read.
Yeah.
So big picture, the pandemic came, we started doing things virtual because that's the way things rolled. The legislature gave us a waiver to do it. So now the pandemic, we're kind of lifting out of it, and we found a need to do some of this stuff ongoing. So now we have to jump through some additional hoops and have formal board approval of aspects of the program to make us good going forward.
And the state adjusted definitions as well, so they made modifications themselves too coming out of the pandemic, because there were just so many users of distance and virtual learning that they needed to adjust their expectations.
So is any of this done in expectation that some families really like this, and you expect this to be, this is kind of a new, probably small, but new way that some families will elect to go?
Yeah, it's a new territory for us. We are making it the best experience we possibly can for our families. Just today at elementary, we had our virtual picture day, so they went over to the stable. Our students were able to physically go and have pictures taken. And then on the opposite side of the stable, we had them spread out so they could meet their teacher and do an activity with their teacher. So we're really trying to make sure they continue to build community. So we do see parents, it's working for them right now. As for the future, that I don't know. I mean, as the past 18 months plus have been, we're not sure what it will bring us, but we are doing the very best we can for our families, choosing that option. We want to take good care of them.
Yeah.
Who's a part of developing the educational development plan? Because it sounds a little bit like an IEP, but not quite. I mean, who's involved in that?
So that was, so we were getting the again, like Mike said, this PAM changes, and every time you kind of look and you're like, oh, there's what you need in the EDP. So we did get those out of the PAM. We found the requirements of what we needed, and then Dr. Sheehan developed basically a Google form to fill in, and then they'll have those conversations with the parents from that to develop it. So it did come out of the requirements there.
Kelly, who actually develops the EDP?
The EDP would then, it's going to filter in based off the parent comment. So technically, the parent's feedback fills into an autocrated form, and that creates that EDP that way. But then the teacher and the parent, we have conferences coming up, so then they can talk through that and make sure that we have it all addressed appropriately.
And then after all of that, it's reviewed or revisited periodically?
Yeah, we need to be reviewing that periodically as well, yep.
At the high school level, the counselors and parents and students are involved in the development of
Okay.
that EDP as well.
So the students are involved
Yes.
at the secondary level?
And then we used to have the Michigan Virtual Academy. Is that, we still do a little bit of that, or is this kind of in place of that because it's more hands-on,
Yeah.
more local?
Yeah, it is, we still do that. So we still have courses that students are allowed to take. I reference 388-1621F. If you remember, it was called 21F was virtual instruction when that law first came about. So we can still have students use Michigan Virtual's catalog, and our students would access that through their counselor. But since these are courses that we're offering as an entity, we need to be able to have all the rest of the things that right now, Michigan Virtual, this was easy for them because they already had all of the syllabi developed. Their course catalog was developed, all the standards were done. So we're just doing some of the work that Michigan Virtual already had completed to meet the needs of our elementary students and those middle school courses.
And we used to do something through like Oakland University, was it, or?
There were a handful of different places that had stuff along the way.
Yeah, it seems like I remember years past.
Yeah.
Thank you. I mean, new and different.
Yeah. Thank you very much, appreciate it. And with that, we are adjourned, thank you.
Thank you very